Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Janaba Labba Girid Bharatari Jai Gopi Janaba Labba Girid Bharatari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishabham Zabhadarajika Jaya Sto There's a Sisi Madesi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishabham Sapadarajika Jaya. Sto there's a Sisi Mad Bhakti Siddhanta Sasita Gaur Prabhupada Ki. Go Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 12, Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead, text 34. Tatra tatra prasamsadbi Pativaimanikai surai Abakur Yamano Dadrise Kusumai Kramasograhan Tatra Tatra Prasamsadbi Pativaimanikai surai Abakir Yamano Dadrise Kusumai Kramasograhan Tatra Tatra Prasamsadbi Pativaimanikai surai Abakir Yamano Dadrise Kusumai Klamasograhan. Vaishnavis. Tatra tatra, here and there. Prasham sadbhi, by persons engaged in the praise of Dhruva Maharaja. Patti, on the path. Vaimanikai, carried by different types of airplanes. Surai, by the demigods. Avakiryamana, being covered. Dadrishe, could see. Kusumai, by flowers. Kamasha, one after another. Grahan, all the planets of the solar system. Translation. While Dhruva Maharaj was passing through space, he gradually saw all the planets of the solar system. And on the path, he saw all the demigods in their airplanes showering flowers upon him like rain. Purport. There is a Vedic version, Yasmin Vigate Sarvam Evam Vigatam Bhavati, which means that by knowing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything becomes known to the devotee. Similarly, by going to the planet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can know all the other planetary systems on the path to Vaikuntha. We should remember that Dhruva Maharaj's body was different from our bodies. While boarding the Vaikuntha airplane, his body changed to a completely spiritual golden hue. No one can surpass the higher planets in a material body. But when one gets a spiritual body, he can travel not only to the higher planetary system of this material world, but even to the still higher planetary system known as Vaikuntha Loka. It is well known that Narada Muni travels everywhere, both in the spiritual and material worlds. It should be noted also that while Suniti was going to Vaikuntha Loka, she also changed her body into spiritual form. Like Sri Suniti, every mother should train her child to become a devotee like Dhruva Maharaja. Suniti instructed her son, even at the age of 5 years, to be unattached to worldly affairs and go to the forest to search out the Supreme Lord. She never desired that her son remain at home comfortably without undertaking austerities and penances to achieve the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Every mother, like Suniti, must take care of her son and train him to become a brahmachari from the age of 5 years, and to undergo austerities and penances for spiritual realization. The benefit will be that if her son becomes a strong devotee like Dhruva, certainly not only will he be transferred back home, back to Godhead, but she will also be transferred with him to the spiritual world, even though she may be unable to undergo austerities and penances in executing devotional service. Translation again. While Dhruva Maharaj was passing through space, he gradually saw all the planets of the solar system. And on the path, he saw all the demigods in their airplanes, showering flowers upon him like rain. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Tatra Tatra, here and there, like various items scattered here and there. They were of very comparatively less importance to Dhruva Maharaj because he's going to Vishnu Loka. But on his way to Vishnu Loka, he happens to see Tatra Tatra here and there, a demigod there, a planetary system there. But nothing will compare to Vishnu Loka. And in fact, even in the spiritual world, there are different gradations. This is hard for you to understand because you would think that everyone has the same flavor, everyone has the same taste, everyone has the same level of perfection. In fact, you would think, how can there be different levels of perfection? Perfection is perfection, right? You have in mind that it's just some kind of static state. But no, Bhagavatam presents different levels of perfection. And that's hard for our conditioned mind to understand. How they can be perfect, more perfect than most perfect. You say, wait a minute, perfect is perfect. This is because we have the tendency to impersonalism. We just like to merge everything, meld everything into just something one. Perfection is just oneness. When actually perfection is full of variegatedness. Just like the happiness of life on the heavenly planets cannot be compared to the so-called happiness on this earth planet. The residents of the heavenly planets are thousands of times more materially happy than earthlings. But superior to the happiness of the heavenly planets is when you are free from all material happiness and distress and merged into Brahman. But the happiness of merging into the impersonal Brahman doesn't equal the happiness of one atom of the happiness of the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. So the more you understand the full picture, the more you can put your quest for happiness in proper perspective. As we were discussing last night with the youth, everyone wants to be happy. That desire to be happy shows you there's something blocking. You want to be happy, but circumstances are there that are impediments. So it's very important for a devotee to understand the different levels of material happiness and spiritual happiness. You might think, just knowing that there's spiritual happiness and not material happiness, that's enough for me. I just want to feel that spiritual energy. I want to feel that spiritual connection, and everything will be all right. Then you read Bhagavatam and find out your quest for happiness doesn't end by your leaving the material world. You can get impersonal liberation, in which you feel neither happiness nor distress. You feel some kind of static satisfaction. The example the acharyas give is like being sent to outer space. You're suspended in outer space. There's no material anxiety, but there are no relationships. So how can there be ananda? But at least you feel you're in a state suspended from all material distress and anxiety. The example I like to give is, suppose it's a very hot day. Today is supposed to get a little warm. Suppose it's a very hot day. You're sweating and perspiring outside, beat down by the heat, and then suddenly you enter an air-conditioned room with a cool lassi drink waiting for you. What do you feel? Relief. Just sitting there in the cool air-conditioned room gives you such an overwhelming feeling of having escaped distress. But can you imagine just trying to stay in that state on and on and on? How long can you do that? Relief. Relief. It's free from the heat. No, what's going to happen after a while? You want to do something. You want to relate to people. One example I give when speaking at universities is about a test, research that was done with young people, asking them, can you stay in an empty room for 15 minutes, please? And we can observe your reactions when you come out of a room. Empty room for 15 minutes. There are no distractions in the room, no mobile phones, no books, no nothing. Just sit there and be with your thoughts, alone with your thoughts for 15 minutes. And the vast majority of students couldn't handle it. 15 minutes to be in an empty room alone with their thoughts. Get me out of here! That's how unpeaceful people are today. So then the researchers asked the students, how much would you pay to avoid a mild electric shock? So most students said, yeah, I'd give $5, $10 US to avoid a mild electric shock. Everyone has felt a mild electric shock before? It's very mild, just, and bring your hand away. So those same students who said they would pay a little money to avoid a mild electric shock, they were asked, now go back inside this empty room for 15 minutes, and there's a button on the table. If you feel like you have to do something, you need some activity, you got to get something going, you can choose to press the button, which will give you a mild electric shock. And of those students who paid money saying, I would give $5 to avoid a mild electric shock, 60% of them in the room for just 15 minutes couldn't handle it. Well, let me create some action. Let me just push the button, and at least it's something. They couldn't just handle being inactive for 15 minutes. They'd rather give themselves an electric shock just to create some variegatedness. So this should show us something, that we want more than relief from material distress. That you can get by merging into Brahman. You can't get that completely on the heavenly planets. Even the heavenly planets have disturbances. But you can get it merged into Brahman. But then what are you going to do? Sometimes imposter yogis, bewildering people say, I was totally merged in oneness, and then I felt compassion upon the people, and I came down to the earthly plane to help you all. Bring out your credit cards. I'll teach you the art of living. Now, wait a minute. If you're totally, perfectly merged into Brahman, how do you feel compassion? There's just oneness. Compassion means you and someone else. But if you're perfectly merged in oneness, you can't feel compassion. But people aren't too bright and they fall for this. So what is beyond the happiness of Brahman? And remember, the happiness of being merged in Brahman is just suspension of material distress. But there's no dynamic activity, there are no qualities, there are no relationships. That's why the Shastra explains that the happiness of Vaikuntha, even just the tiniest bit of Vaikuntha happiness, can't be compared to the ocean of Brahman, being merged into Brahman. But we get further insightful information that the happiness of Ayodhya stands on the head of the happiness of Vaikuntha. Ayodhya, as you know, is the abode of Lord Ramchandra. But the happiness of Dwarka on the topmost planet of the spiritual world surpasses the happiness of Ayodhya. Now, what surpasses the happiness of Dwarka? Because you're at Krishna Loka, the topmost planet in the spiritual world. Something surpasses the happiness of Dwarka? You're no longer in Vaikuntha. You went past Ayodhya Dham. Now you're in Dwarka. But the happiness of Goloka Vrindavan surpasses the happiness of even Dwarka. The happiness of Goloka Vrindavan is so superior that even the distress felt in Goloka Vrindavan stands on the head of all the happinesses of the other places. Distress stands on the head of all the happinesses of Dwarka, Ayodhya, Vaikuntha. Because the distress, the so-called stress in Braj, simply is all about bringing everyone more intensely involved with Krishna. The residents of Braj are not thinking about the distress per se. They're thinking, what about Krishna? It's 100% Krishna's comfort, Krishna's pleasure. So externally it looks like distress. Just like when it is said in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that Kamsa sent Kaliya to the Yamuna River to poison it. So that created certainly some distress, you would think. And you could implant your material distress feelings into the whole pastime. But what's really going on? Everyone in Braj is simply thinking about Krishna's satisfaction. So there's no question of material distress. Even the distress serves as a source of the highest ananda. This is the spiritual world. There's not just what you know as happiness there. There's also what you think you may know as distress. But all the happiness and distress is simply a way of increasing Krishna's satisfaction. So it's non-material. So even there's the perfection of distress. Whereas the impersonalists think, just distress no more. I want out of the material world. But a devotee thinks everything is about Krishna's comfort. Everything is about attachment to Krishna. So the so-called distress simply brings you closer to Krishna. So that's why This is said by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The happiness of Goloka Vrindavan surpasses all the happinesses of the other places, but also the distress in Goloka Vrindavan stands on the head of the happiness in Ayodhya and Vaikuntha and Dwarka. So try to figure that out. Even the distress stands on the happiness of all these other perfect realms. So tatra tatra, Dhruva sees here and there, a demigod over there, a heavenly planet over there, but his spiritual world aircraft is heading to Dhruvaloka, which is a special spiritual planet installed within the material universe. So you learn a lot about how everything becomes spiritualized. As Dhruva Maharaj is boarding the aircraft, his body turns completely spiritual. And he circumambulates the Vaikuntha aircraft because the Vaikuntha aircraft is of the same quality as Krishna. Prabhupada points out that Dhruva, seeing the airplane has come to take him to the spiritual world, still he takes his bath and does his morning ablutions. He's so strict, even though he's already got his ticket to go back to Godhead. Well, no, I have to make sure that I'm Paka, Suchi. And then you know what happens. As he's about to board the Vaikuntha aircraft, he pays his obeisances to all the sages and sadhus gathered there because he's at Badarik How many have been to Badarik I have not. But at the time of Dhruva Maharaj, which is Satya Yuga, there were many sages and sadhus there. Real ones. And so Dhruva Maharaj, instead of thinking, okay, I am going back to Godhead, I am so great. No, he pays his obeisances to all the sages, the rishis, and takes their blessings, showing how you behave even in the perfected stage of bhakti. You still take blessings. You still acknowledge the merit of others. So he does this before boarding the Vaikuntha aircraft. He's not thinking, okay, I'm out of here. You guys, too bad. We would probably think something like that. But he did think of his mother. He thought, how can I go back to Godhead without my mother? There'll be criticism. She did so much for you, and here you are going back to the spiritual world, and you're not concerned with her. So Dhruva Maharaj considered there could be criticism. But he said, I'm not God. I'm not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I myself cannot arrange for her. But just because of his pure devotion, his desires were fulfilled. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead made it so that Dhruva's mother was also in another Vaikuntha aircraft. She's going back to Godhead also. So that's why you read, every mother like Suniti must take care of her son and train him to become a brahmachari from the age of 5 years and to undergo austerities and penances for spiritual realization. The benefit will be that if her son becomes a strong devotee like Dhruva, certainly not only will he be transferred back home, back to Godhead, but she will also be transferred with him to the spiritual world, even though she may be unable to undergo austerities and penances in executing devotional service. So how to apply this in the contemporary context? Why is Prabhupada writing like this? It sounds quite unattainable in this day and age. Every mother must train her son to be a brahmachari from the age of 5 years and to undergo austerities and penances for spiritual realization. As you know, the education and raising of children is a minefield in that every devotee has different opinions how to do it. It's a source of constant discussion amongst devotees who have children. You should do like this. No, you should raise your children like that. And how to educate the children is a field of many opinions. Some say, I want my son to become Shukadev Goswami. Others say, no, I want my son to be like Bill Gates. Others say, I want both, Shukadev and Bill. Keep your sons at home. Homeschool them. No, send your sons to private school, Catholic school. No, do this, do that. On and on it goes. So, the undeniable fact, regardless of one's opinions, is that the best thing is if a son could be trained as a brahmachari from the age of 5 years. That's the best thing. But then, what's next best and next to next best? So we're hearing the ideal standard. And we should not disparage or disregard the ideal standard. At the same time, our householders have to do the best they can according to their context, while keeping that highest standard in mind. And sometimes their training of the children, from what I can see, you know better, those of you who have families, but from what I can see, sometimes the training doesn't pay off for several decades. Maybe not until the child is in old age and you're no longer in this world. I know my mother had a timetable. She would imply, okay, you kids, you can rebel as teenagers, but by the time you're 27, I know I win. Mundane psychologists, at least in the previous century, it's probably all changed now, but they would say that generally a child reverts back to the way the parents raised the child when the child becomes 27, 28. That's before now, when the social fabric is so hellish. You should have sympathy for children growing up in this day and age. The allurements, the enticements, the maya is so heavy. Triple what it was when you were growing up. The social pressure to just have uncontrolled senses in the name of fun. The online pornography, destroying the men. You should have sympathy for children trying to be good in this day and age. Still, the ideal standard is there, and we should not forget it. There'll be cases where the ideal standard can be applied. Maybe not many, but there'll be some. So Dhruva Maharaj's desire for his mother was fulfilled. I know my mother, she thinks she's failed with me. Because there's only one way only. So I failed to attain salvation. She told me, I might have told you before, that she said to me one day, now she denies it. The denial trick. But she told me, and I just told her, you did tell me this. She said to me one day, do you know what I was thinking of while you were being conceived? I said, no. She said, I was praying to God to send me a servant of the Lord. So I said, well, maybe slightly, partially, a little bit, just a little bit, your desire, your prayer was fulfilled. She said, but I meant for Jesus, not Krishna. So I told her, Mother, next time be more specific. But in her own way, she had the right idea, but couldn't provide the proper knowledge and culture to bring that right idea into completion. Therefore, I needed a spiritual father, Srila Prabhupada. So again, let's remember that everything Dhruva Maharaj is dealing with now is pure spirit. The Vaikuntha aircraft is of the same quality as Vishnu. The attendants, Nanda and Sunanda of the Vaikuntha aircraft, they're of the same quality as Vishnu. And as Dhruva is boarding the Vaikuntha aircraft, his body becomes of the same quality as Vishnu. And the same thing happens to his mother. This is spiritual life. Variegatedness, that's of the same quality as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What about this stepping on the head of death? It's very important. You might not think about it, but actually what's happening from the ordinary point of view is that Dhruva Maharaj has died. Did you ever consider that? We see in text 30, Tadot ta na padaputro, the darsha shantakam agatam, mrityur murdni padam dattva arurodhad bhutam griham. When Dhruva Maharaj was attempting to get on the transcendental plane, he saw death personified approach him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death, and thus he got up on the airplane, which was as big as a house. So this Vaikuntha aircraft had parks and lakes and all facilities. Prabhupada quips in the purport that try as a modern scientist might, he can't make an aircraft. They think it's a big deal to make an aircraft with a shower on it and a TV entertainment system. That's the limit of their so-called perfection. But you can't imagine a flying aircraft that can go anywhere in the material and spiritual world, and it's got lakes and ponds and forests and parks, dwellings. So that's what Dhruva Maharaj is boarding. But as he's boarding the Vaikuntha aircraft, he sees death personified coming to him. In other words, he's left his material body. But what does he do about death? Not caring for death, he took advantage of death. Oh, you're a nice stepping stone. I'm using you to board the Vaikuntha aircraft. I step on your head and into the Vaikuntha aircraft. So this is actually death, but you're thinking, this is not death as we know it. But therefore we need that example, that famous example Srila Prabhupada gives of the cat holding in its mouth a mouse and the cat holding in its mouth her own kitten. So from the external point of view, it looks the same, doesn't it? The rat or the mouse is in the mouth of the cat. The kitten is in the mouth of the cat. Same, right? But the qualitative experience is completely different. The kitten in the mouth of the cat is feeling affection. whereas the mouse in the mouth of the cat is feeling terror. So from the external point of view, the death of a devotee looks the same as the death of anyone else. And often hedonists point this out. Oh, are you making a big deal with your spirituality? But you're going to die and I'm going to die. But I'll have more fun before I die. And you have deprived yourself of all the prime recreations of life. So to the vision of the fool, the mudha, it all looks the same. But when you have vision, Shastra Chakshus, when you see through the eyes of the Shastra, you can actually see differently. And so the kitten is feeling a qualitatively completely different experience than that of the mouse. So I don't think you've ever considered when you read Bhagavatam that you could say from one angle of vision that Dhruva Maharaj died. But he's using even death in Krishna's service. He spiritualized even death. It's a stepping stone. Oh, death. Oh, well, let me step on you and board into the Vaikuntha aircraft. Death is there, but he uses it as a transfer point. And of course, as he's stepping into the Vaikuntha aircraft, his body becomes completely surcharged with spiritual energy, turns a golden hue, non-material hue, because the Vaikuntha aircraft doesn't accept material bodies. And you can't get past the higher planetary system with a material body. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fulfilling all of Dhruva's spiritual necessities, even the transferal of his mother back to Godhead. So you might say, well, his mother, she never performed the austerities Dhruva did. She just was a stay-at-home mom. But she was the one who gave Dhruva the hint, the very explicit hint. Someone named Vishnu you should search for, and then all your desires to attain the biggest kingdom will be fulfilled. And as you know, Dhruva Maharaj said, where do you find this Vishnu? His mother said, sages have told me that he's found in the forest. Dhruva was gone. So determined he was. And you can see how undetermined we are. Well, Dhruva Maharaj, at 5 years old, got the direction from his mother that Vishnu is found in the forest, and without hesitation, he's gone to the forest. But, we can't act like that in this day and age, We have desires, we have entanglements, we have attachments. Maybe by the time we're 70, I was discussing with the youth last night. It's a prominent notion that it's too early to be spiritual. We're too young to be spiritual. When we're 70 and on the decline, then that's the time for really getting serious about bhakti. But Dhruva was so instantaneously resolute. You remember the source of his distress. And by the way, the story of Dhruva Maharaj was heard over and over again by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always absorbed in Radha Krishna Leela. He would hear about Dhruva Maharaj again and yet again. So you know how Dhruva Maharaj was insulted by his stepmother. He tried to climb on his father's lap, Uttanapad, the lap of Uttanapad, like his half-brother. Oh, my half-brother is there. He's born from a different wife of Uttanapad. So he's there. I'm also the son of the father, although born from Suniti. Let me climb on the lap too. And you know what happened? His father ignored him because his father was afraid of the wrath of his favorite wife, the one who is not Dhruva Maharaj's mother. So his father ignored him. And Dhruva Maharaj was totally insulted, totally devastated. And what did the favorite wife say when she saw what was happening? Oh, Dhruva, get serious, get real. You haven't taken birth from my womb. What a horrible thing to say. What you should do, Dhruva, is perform severe austerities from many births, and then if you're fortunate, you might be able to become born from me. Ooh. And she's saying this to a Kshatriya boy. So Kshatriya boys, they can't forgive insults. We were discussing yesterday, Pratapana Prabhu and Jai Shri Devi, about forgiveness. In the 9th canto of Bhagavatam, you find that forgiveness is the supreme quality of brahmanas. You would think it's knowledge, it's cleanliness. No, believe it or not, it's forgiveness. And the Shastra, this is Parashuram's father explaining to him. He said, you know, what is the real qualification of Lord Brahma? What is the main way that Brahma got his post? Now, many of you would say, what you've read, 100 lifetimes of perfect execution of karma kanda, the path of karmic activity, 100 births, flawless execution. That's how you become Brahma. But it's explained in the 9th canto that Brahma got his post because of forgiveness. He demonstrated forgiveness to such an extent that he was rewarded with the post of Brahma. Think about that. So furthermore, in the 9th canto explains that just like the sun illuminates the whole universe, similarly the Brahmana radiates forgiveness. So in the purport, it's explained that beauty is different according to different types of human beings. You would think beauty is beauty for everyone. But no. For the Brahmana, the beauty of a Brahmana is forgiveness. For a Kshatriya, it's heroism, never turning your back in battle. Yuddhe chapyapalayanam, Krishna explains. For a Vaishya, it's taking care of cows and staging great cultural expositions. It's hard for people today to understand. How could you become beautiful just by taking care of cows? You become beautiful with cosmetics, you become beautiful with the latest fashions, but taking care of cows makes you beautiful? And then for a Shudra, beauty is in their serving the higher classes, the higher occupations. But what we want to focus on is forgiveness. And that wasn't Dhruva. He's a Kshatriya. He was stung so badly by these harsh words from Uttanapad's favorite wife. So Dhruva went crying to his mother. Where else to go? She already had heard through the palace grapevine her son had been severely insulted. She was already aware of that when Dhruva arrived before her, in front of her. And she heard more details from Dhruva and then told him, there's someone more beneficial than millions of mothers like me. Dhruva said, who's that? That's Vishnu. I've heard from sages and sadhus this Vishnu can fulfill all desires. You want the biggest kingdom. You want to put all your other relatives to shame. He wanted a bigger kingdom than even his grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, and his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. He wanted a bigger kingdom. This is how ambitious he was. So his mother said, you've got to approach Vishnu. And as I said, Dhruva asked, well, where do you find Vishnu? Well, his mother is very simple. I've heard that Vishnu is attained in the forest. That's where you see him. Phew, Dhruva's gone. Right on the dot, he's gone into the forest. And as you know, Narada Muni comes along. Narada Muni always appears at the right time. He's got the best sense of timing. And he says to Dhruva, what are you so hung up about being insulted? What's an insult? Happiness and distress, insults and praise, they come and go. Just let it wash by you. It's water under the bridge. What did Dhruva say? I hear what you're saying and I know you're right, but I'm a Kshatriya. I can't forgive. In other words, that's not my beauty. My beauty is never forgetting the need for revenge. So Narada Muni was very strategic. He told him, all right, you want this biggest kingdom, bigger than anyone in your family line has ever had, then here's the sadhana you have to do. So Narada Muni took advantage of Dhruva's material ambition in such a way that Dhruva would approach the Supreme Personality of God and later lament, what a fool I was. So the Bhagavatam warns us, this is the problem with material desires. Even when you see Vishnu, you'll lament, why did I have such crazy desires? So we're instructed, don't put yourself in a situation that in which you're lamenting. You'll lament like Dhruva Maharaj did. Of course, we'll say, what will we say? Well, that sounds like a pretty good deal, you know. You worship Vishnu, you get the biggest kingdom, and yeah, okay, I'm sorry I had this material desire. Just give me the kingdom. We think like that because we don't understand the purity of bhakti and the power of pure devotional service. That's why when you read Nectar of Devotion, you're instructed in the 6 excellences of pure bhakti. Kesha, Gri, Shubhada, Moksha, Lagrata, Krit, Sudurlabha, Sanjananda, Visheshatma, Sri Krishna, Karshani. Pure devotional service is not just some kind of airy-fairy substance or notion. It has excellences. It destroys all material difficulties. Klesha Gri. It gives all auspiciousness, Shubhada, Moksha Lagrata Krit. It minimizes totally the value of liberation. It's very difficult to achieve, but it's the only means to attract Krishna, and that's what Damodar Leela is all about. Mother Yashoda doesn't exactly bind little Krishna with a rope. She binds him with her bhakti. All right, any questions?
When you're saying that the mothers need to educate their child from age of 5 to be a sannyas. No.
It didn't say sannyasi. That's bad enough, huh?
So what about the girls? Is that the girls they could be a brahmachari too? Like from that age?
If we're talking about the classic Vedic system, which Prabhupada's referring to, the ladies aren't educated to be brahmacharis. They're educated in a different way. This is the classic Vedic system. Even though we don't live in Vedic culture times, it's good to know these things. I remember I was speaking in one temple in the USA at the Sunday feast, and there was mainly an audience from Bharat, but there are also a few others present. And so it was time for questions. And so one of the non-Bharat guests raised their hands. I've heard that in Vedic culture, women are minimized, put down. Everyone's looking at me, ooh. How's he going to handle this one? I just looked at her and said, we don't have Vedic culture. She was like, oh, okay, fantastic. Now, I didn't tell her. I said that lamenting we don't have Vedic culture. But she thought, this is great, no Vedic culture. So in that way, I didn't get involved in any kind of worthless dialogue. This point is very controversial. And your question is alluding to that. We don't have Vedic culture now. Not even in India. In India, you just see the vague remnants of Vedic culture. So we have to do the best we can according to the current circumstances. But I have no doubt, if you ask me, I have no doubt that what Bhagavatam is presenting is the best way. But it's not the way things are today. And we have to help people to become Krishna conscious where they're at right now, while at the same time knowing what's the best thing. And I have never seen anything so cohesively and comprehensively as great as the presentation of Varnashram Dharma in the books. I haven't seen anything as astoundingly comprehensive as that. So there you have it. So you can raise your son the way you want. And take the responsibility and the reactions. Anything else? Yes. Are there traces of? It's very hard to root out impersonalism without Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So you need Bhagavatam, an immersion in Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is actually Bhagavatam. There's so many verses from Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And yes, these tinges of impersonalism harass us up until the stage of bhava. It seems so simple and clear. There's just a spiritual energy, which is love, which is happiness, which is peace. We like to think of formless, qualityless, activityless perfection. That's the acharyas point out, that's the natural tendency when you're first realizing the material energy is an illusion. Your next step is always impersonalism, even in the name of mainstream religion. Because there's no information about the variegatedness of perfection. So even mainstream religions, Western religions, they're tinged with impersonalism. Anything else? Yes? But you say Mahaprabhu came here to give Braj Bhakti, but sometimes he would demonstrate the form of Adi Varaha. And what do you say about that? Sometimes he'd be in the bhava of Nrsinga. What do you say about that? Sometimes he would celebrate Janmashtami. Sometimes, Ram Vijay. But yes, his main mission was to taste love and separation by taking the position of Srimati Radharani. Yes. Dhruva Maharaj shows the super excellence of pure bhakti. He approached Narada Muni and the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a material ambition. I want the biggest and best kingdom ever. If that's not material, I don't know what is. But Narada Muni skillfully strategized the situation. Yes, here's how to get the biggest kingdom. You chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So similarly, in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada explains that this Krishna consciousness movement is meant to attract all kinds of persons, not simply the ones who are free of material desires. It's meant to attract even those who have material ambitions and desires. But in the association of advanced devotees, such persons become purified. But still, the Krishna conscious movement is not simply for attracting persons with pure desire for pure devotional service. It's meant to attract everyone. Just like Narada Muni attracted Dhruva to do bhakti. Yes. That's what the 9th canto of Bhagavatam says. That's what Parashuram's father is telling him. Okay? Yes. How do you cultivate quality of forgiveness? Start trying to do it, especially when someone has offended you. You'll see that it's an austerity. I like to think, forgive in the way that you would like to be forgiven. I remember in Los Angeles when Guru Puja was about to start and Srila Prabhupada was there, and I was sitting right in front of Prabhupada. I always tried to do that. And one devotee who had caused a mess, a big mess and deviant, but he was he was the first devotee to come to Australia and open up Krishna consciousness in Australia. But during his time, afterwards, as president of the New York Temple, he got into a mess. And so, 6 months later, he shows up in Los Angeles. And when I saw him, because I was in the New York Temple and had just gone to Los Angeles for the BBT, and I saw him approach Prabhupada in order to make the Guru Puja offering. He had disappeared, this devotee, disappeared for 6 months after the scandal, massive scandal. And now suddenly he's appearing in Prabhupada's presence in the temple room in Los Angeles, and I was like, this guy. And then I looked at Prabhupada, and I saw Prabhupada looking at him with such love. I said, wait a minute, what's going on here? Prabhupada's not looking at me like that. Prabhupada was looking at him with such intense love. I couldn't believe it. So Prabhupada always said this devotee was a first-class businessman. I read that in Prabhupada's letters as I was filing them. That was one of my services, to take care of Prabhupada's correspondence. So I heard from Prabhupada's servant after the Guru Puja, which started with Prabhupada looking at this devotee with such affection. That devotee when Prabhupada went upstairs to his rooms, the devotee followed Prabhupada. And then remember, to understand this, you have to remember, everyone knew this person was like a business-type devotee. So Prabhupada knew exactly how to encourage him, because Prabhupada was hoping this devotee would return and give his skills for spreading Lord Chaitanya's mission. So the devotee enters Prabhupada's room offers his Dandavats, plunks a wad of $25,000 on the table in front of Prabhupada. And what does Prabhupada say? Oh, so-and-so, so nice to see you, and your money too. Prabhupada knew how to encourage him. This is a Vaishya. So that I started thinking about forgiveness at that point. And then when at the BBT working on the ninth canto, I read these verses. And yes, if you're a real Brahmana, this is a challenge to apply. Especially if you've been wronged. What to speak of someone else being wrong, but you have been wrong. You have been insulted. You have been misjudged. It's tough. But that's the beauty of a Brahmana. That's the Brahmana tejas, the power of a Brahmana. That tejas, that power is so much that that's how Brahma gets his post. So it's a lot to think about. Kshatriyas are law and order. Brahmanas are forgivers. All right, no more questions. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.